It has been a while since I've made an appearance on this channel, and there's good reason for that. I am currently in between jobs and my day-to-day life is a little bit more hectic at the moment because of certain circumstances which I can't really discuss here. But I did want to take some time to talk about a case which I have had several requests about over the past couple of weeks. It was rather secluded, almost hidden away from the rest of the moors, so he felt a sense of adventure as he approached it. Concerned, Ethan told his mother what happened. She wasn't too concerned. But upon reaching the spot where he last saw his pet, he found something even more disturbing. Every night, he would dream of the same thing, a dark figure standing over him, its face obscured by shadows, whispering the same phrase, "Who disturbs my rest?" Each morning, he would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. There, etched into the rock was a large pentagram, and as he stared at it, he felt a sudden wave of dizziness wash over him. With a guttural voice, it spoke, "You have trespassed on my sacred ground, and now you shall pay the price." Nerves returned to their normal state. Ethan and his grandfather looked at each other, their faces pale but determined. They had won, but the battle was far from over. Ethan, however, refused to be cowed. He knew that the demon was trying to break their spirits, but he wasn't going to let it succeed. Every time something happened, he would confront it head-on, demanding that it leave him and his family alone. At first, the demon would respond with angry growls and maniacal laughter, but slowly it began to whisper, trying to reason with him. Ethan, though scared, stood his ground. He remembered his grandfather telling him that the demon could only be banished using the ancient ritual. Well, sort of. See, the house where these events supposedly took place still stands to this day, and it is open to the public. And to be honest, it's hard to say for sure. But what is certain is that the events that inspired the story did take place in the house. There was a hermit who lived near the property who did practice dark magic. His name was Joseph Clark, and he was eventually arrested for abusing local children. So, we know that part of the story is true. But was he a demon? Who knows? You can even book a room in it if you want. Now, obviously, I don't recommend doing that unless you're looking for a new demonic roommate. The place is now known as the Ghost Ship Inn, and according to reviews, it's got a pretty solid rating. Go figure. Objects moved on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and footsteps could be heard in the attic. It was as if the demon had taken up residence in the house itself. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. If you want to help me out, then consider supporting me online. That's all for this week. I'll catch you guys next time. He knew that the longer he resisted, the weaker the demon would become. And finally, after weeks of torment, the demon gave up. It disappeared, leaving Ethan and his family in peace. Fearful, Ethan and his family considered leaving, but his grandfather urged them to stay. The haunting was over. And as the years passed, the memory of the demon faded into local lore, becoming nothing more than a campfire story to scare children. He believed that the demon was merely trying to scare them away. There are multiple versions of this story that are commonly told. Some tell the story like I just did, where the demon eventually gives up and leaves the family in peace. But others say that the exorcism didn't go as planned and the spirit still remains in the house, moving objects, shaking beds, and even interacting with people. In the worst iterations of the story, it's said that the spirit has even possessed people, causing them to act erratically and even violently. By showing them these signs, he wanted to prove that they weren't going to be intimidated. So, despite his fear, he focused on the task at hand. Holding the cross high, he shouted, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I banish you, foul demon, from this place and from our lives." As he uttered these words, the figure recoiled as if in pain. The air crackled with energy and the ground rumbled. Then with a final, "Begone," the figure let out a deafening roar and vanished into thin air. Upon hearing Ethan's story, his grandfather became grave. He told Ethan that the area they had moved to had a dark history, one that many locals tried to forget. According to the tales he'd heard, there was once a hermit who lived deep within those moors. He was a sinister man who dabbled in dark magic. Locals claimed that he made a pact with a demon, sacrificing all of humanity for power and knowledge, and now it seems his spirit is restless. When he regained his senses, he turned to leave, but moments later, he heard a voice behind him saying, "Who disturbs my rest?" Armed with holy water and a silver cross, they located the pentagram and began to exorcise the area. As they performed the ritual, the air grew heavy and the wind picked up, swirling around them. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shake and a low growl echoed across the moors, and then he appeared. The dark figure from Ethan's dreams stood before them, its eyes glowing red in the dim light. Startled, he turned around, but there was nobody there. Shaken by the experience, he quickly left the area and went straight home. She said it was probably just an animal that got after him, but Ethan knew it was more than that. And with that belief came a strange premonition that something dark and evil lurked in those moors. Then suddenly, without warning, the dog refused to go any further. He growled and pulled on his leash, trying to turn back. Ethan, though, being just a curious kid, paid no attention to his dog's reactions and continued on. Moments later, he heard a twig snap underneath his foot and suddenly his dog ran off, disappearing into the bushes. It's quite different from other cases I've covered on the channel before. And although I was hesitant to cover it initially due to the sensitive nature of the subject matter, I thought why not? Let's do it. This is The Haunting of Ethan Gray. The story takes place in the English town of Great Ayton, where our story begins in the late 19th century. Our story begins with the protagonist of the tale, a young boy named Ethan Gray. His family moved into a house called Eston Lodge, which they thought would be a fresh start for them and their son. For the most part, it was. Ethan enjoyed exploring the nearby moors with his loyal dog companion by his side. He and his dog were inseparable. They explored these lands together every day, and he grew to love the freedom and peacefulness it brought him. Then one day, Ethan and his dog set out to explore a particular part of the moors that he'd never been to before. When Ethan returned home, he went straight to his bedroom window to look out for his dog, but he didn't see him anywhere. The next day, Ethan decided to venture out once again to search for his dog. That night, Ethan's nightmares began. One day, Ethan decided to confide in his grandfather, a man known for his knowledge of local folklore and legends. Determined to put an end to this, Ethan and his grandfather ventured back to the moors. Terrified, Ethan and his grandfather stumbled back, but the figure only advanced. With the demon gone, the tremors ceased and an eerie silence descended upon the moors. Back at the house, strange things started to happen. So they stayed. Days turned into weeks, and the supernatural activity continued. The demon taunted him, saying that it was pointless to resist and that they were all doomed to suffer. Ethan, though, held firm. From that day forward, the house was filled with warmth and happiness once again. But this is where things get weird. Despite the happy ending I just described, this story doesn't end there. The craziest part of the story, though, is that it's all based on true events. Now, there's been a lot of debate as to whether or not the story is true. And that's the end of this episode of The Haunting of Ethan Gray.